One more point on the schools. Mrs. Nicolosi's in here tonight, is she? I don't know. I'm just there.
Yeah.
But Merchantville schools have a decided advantage in state aid per student as well. And where you're in a send-receive relationship, where you're actually paying tuition, I don't believe it's an issue. Your town gets its aid based on its characteristics under the School Funding Reform Act. But once you merge, and you become part of an entity that has $10 billion of property value, and you're coming in at 275, you may lose your identity. And if you lose that advantage per kid, that's another cost to the equation. That really wasn't efficiency or effectiveness or best practice related at all. It was just, what's the government going to say?
Right, those are some of those hard
But that can be
numbers
answered independent of a consultant.
Right.
Yes,
You can write a letter to
that's
get
part
an
of
answer
what
on
we'll
that
cover
right
from
now.
teaching. It's the impact, the fiscal impact. You know, that's the part of what the state would be
And
providing.
I'll put it in these terms. When you talk about, you go through a process where you meld the tax pools together and the allocation basis together to come up with what the new tax rates might look like and who's a winner and who's a loser. Bob made a point at the last meeting that when you do that, we had an estimate that said Merchantville will get $1.4 million less taxes allocated to them, and Cherry Hill will get $1.4 million allocated to them. And somebody they didn't know, I guess there's a state law that will try to help equalize that. But once you start throwing in $1 million to $1.3 million of state aid that you might lose, it just further tilts the equation. I mean, because now you're at almost $2.5 million to $3 million that you have to save before anybody breaks even, before there's even a dollar saved in total. Okay, because someone's going to have to come up with the money to fund this, what happens to the inequality when you merge the two tax pools. And until you cover that, because somebody's going to have to be made whole, and in this instance it'll be Cherry Hill, until that money gets covered by actual savings, no one saves anything. From the largest perspective, you lose the state aid, it gets even worse. Okay, so I would think that would be something you'd answer day one. Before
you have to wait till the end of the consultant study.
Right. You can do that for the cost of a stamp. I mean, you know, so I would get that done.
Steve, do you know how much state aid you get? How much state aid does the borough receive?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
I'll tell you what, I'll email it to Tom tomorrow. I can get off it's on the website. Because you need to know what it is per kid. Okay, it's not just in total. I mean, it's easy to get at. I'll email it to Tom tomorrow. What that number is and how it compares to what Cherry Hill gets.
You can guarantee it'll be 2 to 3 times what Cherry Hill gets.
On a per kid basis, on a per child basis. So if you have to live with what Cherry Hill gets because you become, 2.7% of the total.
John, I haven't looked at that website lately, but usually that's a year or two. It won't be the current, right?
No, you can get. What I'll have to use, Tom, is as long as it's okay from an estimate standpoint, I can give you the current aid allocations. I may have to use the 2010-11 head count, full-time enrollment. To give you the per kid allotment. It'll be as accurate as that. Okay, or as inaccurate, however you want to put that. Okay.
But the Department of Ed can give you the current number.
Yeah, the Department of Ed can probably do the current, but I'll give you something to go on anyways. I can send that to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hi, Amy Meacham, 122 Leslie Avenue, Merchantville. And while things often come down to money and taxes, I'm going to flip it. We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to talk it from that parent perspective in a Merchantville sense. Mr. James and I had a quick conversation at one of the other meetings, and I know it was early in the process. But we talked about details and how much information. But my concern as a parent in that education perspective is actually not so much in the high school realm, although obviously that's a concern, and I'm thrilled that the Board of Education is making moves to change it as well as the town. So I mean, I think those processes aren't necessarily contrary to each other. It's showing the importance of that secondary education to us. But I focus a little bit now on this K-8 experience, which I'm going through now with a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so my concerns come down not necessarily about taxes. I live in Merchantville, I pay taxes. I moved here knowing that I would pay those taxes. But but really what happens to our school, where my kids will go. I'm sure she's worried about where her kids maybe get moved. I get worried that my child is now bused to one school different from her friend bused to another. Or the fact that, they're being bused at this age at all, I mean, is actually a concern of mine. I'm not comfortable with my kindergartner getting on the bus. I know many people do it in many towns. That's, not something that I'm in favor of and one of the reasons why I moved. But I guess what I'm saying is I think that those details as far as where my kids will go into school, if our school is going to close, if, they're going to be going close by, if they're going to be moved. I'm not sure where that falls in the weeds, the details, but those are the things that I'm looking at as far as decisions. It's actually not about the money for me at all, funny enough. Yes, do I want savings? Absolutely. That would be great, but it's really all that. And my concern in moving to, my concern is that I moved to Merchantville for that actually K through 8 experience. That K through 8 experience. And I live every day, I'm president of the PTA. I see the benefits every day of that K through 8 experience. Of that 7th grader interacting with that 1st grader, believe it or not. I mean, it's actually a wonderful thing. So I actually look at that, how it affects that level, not the high school, because I moved here now, I know I have to make choices, and certainly we're having better options, but it's really about that experience and how full the classrooms get at another school, where they're going to be going, but all the things I said. So I take the money out of it because I, hope to reap the benefits somewhere, but it's really about those. And so I'm not sure where those details fall in weeds, not weeds, detail, you know what I mean? And just because, and the reason sorry to interrupt, but the reason why I said that is that when you and I had that conversation, at that point, which was very early, you thought that I wouldn't know that information from a study, that it would be looking at this kind of bird's eye, 360, degree view, and that those questions would not be answered. And without those questions answered, I can't, in good faith, consider the study. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Right. And I'll respond to this real quickly. My understanding of the process has changed since
Okay.
then. So that I believe that the kind of information that you would need as a parent, as a concerned and involved parent, is information that you would get from the study. I believe that
I think we would have to have some level of detail on the library and on the school. But again, off the top of my head, I think actually pretty firmly that because Cherry Hill is the much bigger district, they're not going to change their middle school, elementary school, high school modality to do this transaction. So that I would have to say, it's pretty much a fixed piece of what we would have going forward. So again, people have to decide whether they like that or not. But whatever experience a child has in Merchantville now would be the elementary school, middle school, high school experience. So my kid was the president, he's now 30 years old by the way, of Carusi Junior School, and he succeeded in being the only in 20-some years president of the 8th grade class to lose Spirit Week to the 7th graders. It was humiliating, ruined his life. No, he's an educator, so it's a good thing.
Character.
It was character building for him.
Just one thing when Amy was speaking about it's not the money for you. And I have to say, I agree with, as much as it pains me to say it, I do agree with that. And I think that may be far more of a community feeling in Merchantville than people realize. So I hope you're not just or primarily looking at the bottom line, because there's far more. It's the community feel, it is the school, it is the police and the fire and all that. We might be willing to take a little bit more of a hit in taxes to keep some of that. Not that I would prefer to keep it and lower the taxes. I think everybody would. But I certainly would hope that the bottom line is certainly not the only thing that people are concerned about.
That's why we talked about the cultural fit.
Yes, absolutely.
That's that piece that
Right.
intangible that's not as easy to wrap your arms around. But it's important.
Right.
Because we could have all of the other ducks in order, and if the cultural fit doesn't work, it's still not going to succeed. So it is important, and sometimes it is as important, if not more important than the other thing. So,
I guess my thoughts were, that's why we were doing this. We're saving money, cost savings. Like, I thought that's what the number one priority was. Certainly, nobody wants less services, but I thought that was the number one reason Merchantville wanted to merge.
No, it's not just, it's, well, from my perspective, I don't think it's just money. You know, there's services
right.
within both communities that need to be addressed. You know, like how there are things that happen in Cherry Hill that don't happen in Merchantville. That as, you know, if the merger happened, that we would get services that we don't currently have if the merger happened. So it's not just about money. It's not, okay, here's X, you know, we're paying this money in taxes now. With the merger, we would pay this money in taxes. That's a part of it, but that's not the whole thing. There's a much broader view of it, from my perspective anyway. I think my fellow commissioners share that.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but services, that's just like an option that you buy in your car, right?
No, it's not.
You come-
Not from my perspective.
If you go to Cherry Hill or if you go to Merchantville, you can walk to Aunt Charlotte's, right? Which is a great service as far as I'm concerned. If you live in Cherry Hill like I do, and you live on a county street, you get no plowing service, nor the road isn't fixed because it's a county road, even though I live in Cherry Hill. I mean, these are little things that you say, what do I get for my tax dollar? It all does come down to tax dollar.
I do think, again, we've highlighted probably a bit of a cultural difference based on, you know, the size, right? For those of us who live in Cherry Hill, I mean, I love Merchantville. It's got a great set. I'm a housing guy, so I love, you know, the Victorian homes in Merchantville. That's the one style housing we don't have in Cherry Hill. It'd be great to have it in our community. I think the downtown in Merchantville is way cooler than anything in Cherry Hill, so you guys are privileged here already. But for the average Cherry Hillian, I'm projecting this is more about ultimately where tax rates go. But because of the relative size of the communities, there actually would be, in a variety of different ways, maybe pluses and minuses that people have to think through, more felt impact on the way Merchantville operates and feels and is a community. Again, I would say, without coming to a conclusion on it tonight, which we obviously can't, a piece for people in Merchantville that you're going to have to figure out, my assumption is that more people would want to move into this community than currently they do, based on a better option on schools. So in the calculus, people's homes ought to be, if the world works that way, who knows in this troubled times they don't live in, but ought to be more valuable. And if you look at the relative price of homes, it seems to me, again, on the back of an envelope, probably true that the similar home in Merchantville is currently less valuable than that home in Cherry Hill.
And that's one of those tangibles that, I mean, it's not really going to be addressed in the study.
No,
You know, like,
it can't be.
and I can maybe say, well, but, you know, if this happens in the merger and people approve it, then Merchantville values would go up and Cherry Hill values would stay the same, or whatever. You know, like, that's to be seen what happens. You know, so not that we reject this is what's going to happen, but there's a certain feeling, you know, that might come based on, based on a merger or not merging.
Okay, anybody else? Holy moly, Whiskey and Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, everybody.
George, we just